the idea, just starting about how I had been in the Port of Incheon, pretty much alone, dark empty night there, and come upon this young kid, this teenage kid, who had built this little barrier against the wind and had lain down to sleep, covered himself with maybe something like a gunny sack or whatever. And he looked pretty cold, and I had this, well, people refer to him as a bomber jacket sometimes, a fur collar or a fake fur, I don't remember which it was, and wool lining. I guess it was all like wool. And, lambskin lining and everything. Saw this kid there, and I just went away. I hitchhiked. I caught a ride on a truck with some Korean guys that went by on a road not far from there. In the truck, and I think, my God, what have I done? I'll never need this jacket again. I should have given it to the kid. And from time to time, the rest of my life, and even still, it bothers me that I didn't cover him with that jacket. Guess I mentioned earlier, it took us about a month, almost a month, to get across the ocean, that wreck of a ship. But the business of going across an ocean or across town is kind of an interesting thing with respect to your, I don't know, somehow you're psychologically or whatever, kind of changing from place A to place B. I know I used to drive for about 45 minutes to get from our apartment in the University District to the school where I taught in Renton. And then all of a sudden they put the freeway through. And it took a much shorter time. Then we moved, and I'd be at work in 5 minutes and home again in 5 minutes. In neither case was I ready to be there. And I, for example, know people that have, one friend in particular, coming home from spending his year in Vietnam, and he goes out one morning, and all the other guys are going out with their guard dogs and their black face and everything like that. And he goes and gets on a big yellow airplane, and in just a few hours he's home. And he said it happened too fast. He wasn't ready. Well, that was one thing about my case of coming home on a boat. It took quite a long time, and you do have time for transition, but some funny things happen, I suppose. Every morning, wake up on the ship and go down to breakfast and get my coffee and breakfast and so on, and do whatever I felt like doing until it was time to go drive the boat. And one morning, I woke up to this just horrible noise. Somebody was screaming through a loudspeaker, it seemed to me. And what? Oh, it was even different than that. I woke up and there was music playing. That was it. Music playing. Oh, boy, that's nice, And the song ended, and then somebody just started yelling through the microphone in some crazy way. And I realized that it was an advertisement on the radio. And I had not heard an advertisement for 2 years. It was just awful. I just couldn't stand it. I wanted to try and grab my, I had a roommate there in that ship, and he'd let this radio on and go on someplace. I just want to break the thing into a million pieces. It was horrible. And I had simply forgotten about commercials. Anyway, wasn't too much longer than we sighted land, and we had turned out to come to Coos Bay, Oregon. And we went up the estuary there, which I guess at some point becomes a river. So we're going up this narrow estuary and kind of squeaking through a place where there was a bridge that spun to the side of the way to get out of the boat. And I'm standing on the deck looking out with another sailor. And I says, "Look at that." He says, "What?" I said, "That car." He says, "What car?" I said, "That one right there." I said, "Look." I said, "It's black and purple and cream colored." I said, "3 colored. There's another one." He slowly turned around and looked at me like a madman. He said, "How long did you say you've been gone?" And it seems that in 1955 they'd come out with what I thought to be rather outlandish colors, and I think that was a Dodge that probably had fins like a rocket on it or something too. And so here was a bit of re-entry that, in spite of the long time in between, it was a bit of a shock. And then I so when I was getting off, they wanted me to go around the Panama Canal with them and back to New Jersey. And I got, "Nope, I'm getting off right here. Sorry, find yourself another crew member." And so I wake up one morning and they say, get up. The ship's blowing out in the middle of the channel." I thought, sure. I said, "Hey, I already quit." He says, "Nope." He says, "You're on the ship. We got an emergency here. Get up and let's get out there on the deck." So I did, and we got a line on shore and got ourselves winched in again, and it was Sunday morning in Coos Bay, Oregon. And then I got off the ship, and I went ashore. And I was just shocked. There were these women there who had these great big white beaks for noses. And they had these just red just smeared on their lips. And God knows what else. And they just looked ghastly there. My God, what is this? And then look at the children. And see little fat pigs, little white fat pigs, way overdressed with clothes on beyond what anybody needed. Well, of course, I simply wasn't used to that sort of thing. And I was used to the soft, tan faces of the Korean women, and everybody was thin. And the clothes were just not much of an item in the Korea that I was involved with at that time. Culture shock, I guess there's a name for it, culture shock. So even with the slow trip across, why, you run into it sometime. Matter of fact, I remember when I got to Seattle, I went to Barbara's place. She had an apartment there with a couple of friends. I had been told where it was and take the key and go on in and everything. There's nobody home, so I went in. And I looked into the refrigerator. And here's this refrigerator, typical refrigerator with bits of stuff, stuck here and there and everything. And that was another shock because I had apparently not seen a refrigerator of quite like that for some time, and I had seen probably advertisements of perfectly organized refrigerators. It was a standard refrigerator with bits of stuff here and there. Another bit of culture shock, I guess. When I left Coos Bay, I don't know, I must have been in a hurry or something. Didn't take a bus or whatever back to Seattle. I grabbed an airplane on West Coast Airlines, and they had, I guess, a few DC-3s, and so I get on this DC-3. And it doesn't fly exactly directly to Seattle. It must have made at least 5 stops along the way. So you'd get up, maybe a few thousand feet, and the next thing you're coming down landing in some little town and on again to some other little town. Finally, we land at Boeing Field, so I get off the airplane and just since it's Boeing Field, not SeaTac, I just walked through the airport there and got on a city bus. And I'm riding on a city bus back through Seattle. And for the life of me, it seemed like I'd never been gone. Just like you were right back where you had been yesterday, and nothing had happened in between. But it didn't turn out to be quite that way. It was a strange thing for the next, I don't know, maybe a couple of months or something. And here you are back in this familiar city, but your friends that have gotten married and gone to work somewhere, and you were just in a kind of a world all by yourself where you have no job, no connections to any people, and it's the strangest feeling. That I can't even think of a description for now. Just a kind of a amazingly disconnectedness, I guess, for a period of time. And what's interesting is that at the same time, my good friends from college days, Norm Osborne and Warren Jones, and who was our other painting partner, by the way, and Ralph Turman, who I don't think ever did much work in his life. Anyway, we all turned out to be kind of rattling around in the same kind of a loose way. And one time, Norm, I guess, was house sitting someplace, and we got together and we got drunk. And kind of crazy drunk. And woke up in the morning and discovered the house owners were coming back early, and we had a lot of cleaning up to do as fast as we could. But after that day, for some reason, maybe it was getting together with close friends again, I don't know what, it seemed like the world took shape again. And we all got reconnected somehow. Somewhere in there I must have got a job. And so that was re-entry, I guess, to Seattle. And the other three guys, oddly enough, had just come back from, respectively, Japan, Panama, and Alaska after being gone for anywhere from 1 to 3 years, I guess. Well, I guess a series of jobs. I sold dog licenses from door to door for the city of Seattle for a while because they paid me partly in gasoline. I had bought a Volkswagen, a brand new Volkswagen, for $1,200. 1956 Volkswagen, I guess. Everybody was simply aghast at how many miles per gallon the Volkswagen would get back then, because they were just way ahead of anything else of their time. And so they'd pay me in gasoline as if I had an ordinary car, and I made a lot of money just on gasoline, I guess. Plus they paid me so much per hour, and then at some point, I guess I went to work at Dick's Drive-In because John Riemann worked there, and it seemed like a good idea for a while. Anyway, those were, I guess, just enough to finally steer me back to the radio station, where I did a newscast for a small amount of money per month, and had decided that I would go into teaching, and I had to take this awful year of education courses, but I did do it, and eventually became a teacher. And in between, I would occasionally go over to the old Wesley Club again. Some of the old people some of the previous people that I'd known there were still around, and a friend that I met at that time, Howard Holmquist, had just gotten out of the Air Force. He was navigator on a night fighter. Was it a night fighter, or was it just some kind of a jet, two-seater? And anyway, he was building a boat, 17-foot little small cruiser with a cuddy cabin on it. And so the two of us actually took to building this boat together. And so at night we'd go and we'd be building the boat, and we'd get to some stopping point, and we'd head back up to the district, and we're going to go for a cup of coffee and a donut or whatever. We'd drop into Wesley Club for a minute to see who was around. And it seemed that time after time, we'd get back to Wesley Club about at the same time this girl or young woman would be getting back from a date with her boyfriend. And so there she'd be, kind of in the lobby of the place, and we'd say, "Hey, well, Tweety, we're going over for coffee. You want to join us?" So she'd join us. Tweety, of course, is what they called Luana, because her last name was Tweety, and that's what they just came to call her. So the three of us would go out and have coffee every night. Not every night, but frequently. Got to know each other, and I don't really know how things went from there. I know that at one point I'd been looking for a certain kind of a room with a view. I wanted to be able to look over the water. Here was one just down the street, a couple of 3 blocks from Wesley Club. Looked out over Lake Union, and this was kind of neat. Well, it didn't cost much either. And what happened was I found it because Luana and a friend had taken a room downstairs, a small apartment, I'd say, not just a room. So I took this one upstairs, and we got a little more acquainted there, and actually, while we were living there, we decided to get married. I have a picture that I always wish I'd made a larger copy of, and I hope I can find, of Luana sitting in front of the window that I liked, and having a cup of coffee, and yeah, I hope I can find that picture. I've been wanting to find that anyway. It's around somewhere. Really the best decision I ever made in my life, and so from then on I was launched on a really wonderful new venture, which I must say has gone extremely well and beyond my wildest dreams. I had always thought, for example, that if I was going to live in Seattle, and so if I went into teaching I'd be able to do that, that I would want to live in a place where I had a view. But, of course, at the time it seemed wildly impractical that you could ever afford such a place as that. I remember going to visit the homes of people who were rather wealthy, and they had these tremendous views and stuff like that. The actual idea of getting to that place was still a bit down the road, but not near as far as I had any idea. We did get married, and we did move into a walk-up flat above some shops, like what the heck, there was, I guess, a barber, and then up above that was a dentist's office, and then up on the walk-up 3rd floor was us. And we had this little apartment up there, and in the University District. It wasn't all bad, actually. It had some neat features to it, and of course, Rowan was born while we were there, and we moved down the hall to a 2-room apartment. It had some neat features to it, one of which was you could walk up on the roof, and there was a kind of a box-like structure up there. There's a room, of course, and it had the laundry there with a washing machine and a dryer, and it was always kind of warm up there, and you'd walk across the roof in maybe the rain on this boardwalk across the tar roof of this building, and into that place, and here it was dry and warm. It was kind of cozy while you'd go up there to do the laundry. And if you went over the edge, you could look down on the top of the A&P where we bought our groceries, and you could actually pee on the A&P. Not to say that anybody ever did, but I wouldn't deny that they might have, just so they could say they'd done it. Anyway, A&P was a kind of a store that used to get around. It used to be sort of an equivalent of Safeway, but it dropped away, I think, in time. So that's where we lived until we got a place in Renton, and a little house there. I remember looking out the window one time. Little window in the little house built by the little man in the little orchard, actually. And across the lake, I saw a towboat tied up by a bunch of logs one weekend day, and I said, summer's coming, and I'll see if I can get a summer job on that tugboat over there. So I drove over and discovered that it was just a place called the Barbie Mill, and they just used it to shift logs around, and of course didn't have a regular crew at all. But I drove by a house, had a big sign up in the front yard, for sale by owner, and so I went in and took a look at it on my way back from the tugboat, from the Barbie, and it had this wonderful Italian marble fireplace with a big mirror overhead that looked back out over the lake and all. And here was a house with a view for $12,000, and went home, got Luana, came back, looked at the place, and we bought it. And that was our entry into Kennydale.
I still remember Roland Bryan standing at the front window there, looking out, and the train man always waved at him. Train men, actually, sometimes. Or Luana and the boys would be out in the yard, like they were old friends of the train guys, and you could, in those days, watch the working water, too, where the tugboats and sometimes bigger ones used to go by before they cut it off with the new bridge. Thing that occurs to me going back to the days that I started going to sea that one year in 1951, that I don't think I'll bother telling about. But what happened was that at first I was assigned to a pool of men that would be ready to step in case they suddenly needed some more crews for the Korean War effort. And but we were just kind of sitting there and waiting, and nobody's getting on any ships, and guys were getting pretty antsy. And so I went down to Pier 38. The ship was at Pier 90, 91 or something. And that's where you had to get anything done. And there was a long line of men all the way out on the dock, and from the dock, or from the shore end of the dock out to a big old ramshackle joint where the guy hired you at the counter or whatever he did. I had been up there once before, finally got to the front of the line when I got hired, and so the one thing I noticed was that no matter who he was talking to, what he was doing, if the phone rang, the guy would interrupt anything to answer the phone. And so I went down there, and once again, here's this long line of men all the way down the dock. Obviously never going to get anywhere. And at the end of the line, there was a telephone booth. So I went in the telephone booth and phoned the guy, and sure enough, he instantly answered the phone. I said, myself and my buddy would like to get on a ship and get going somewhere. He says, well, you're willing to work engine room? I said, sure, anything. He says, well, you have any experience? I said, no. He says, you can start as a wiper. And how about your friend? I said, yeah, he can work fireman or oiler or whatever. He's had some experience. He said, fine. He can come on as an oiler, and you can both start tomorrow. Just get on the Victory Ship Lieutenant George W.G. Boyce tomorrow at such and such a time. And so we went and got a job, and that's how I went to Alaska. Should be some kind of a message about communication somewhere, but I doubt it. Some old friends from past that I haven't been in touch with have contacted me since I've gotten this cancer. And interesting that they seem to associate me with events of some kind I don't know how you describe, because they weren't all controversial, but a lot of them were, but sort of a tendency, a penchant for doing things that were, I guess in a sense, some maybe sort of spectacular or something. I don't know what truth there is to that, but apparently some. And I think, well, coming up with the lake house, for example, it seemed to be out of the ordinary. People, that would be one association. I don't know, later, the union and all the controversy that seemed to bring up, both in the school district and it played through the newspapers, and I don't know, it never wasn't looking for controversy, it was looking for, well, there was a job that needed to be done there, and so there were the years of going off in the night down to the Broadway district of Seattle, the main union office down there, to write the newspaper that would send out through to all the teachers, and guys coming to the house, sometimes smoking cigars in the basement and having their feet up on the desk and so on, and doing some planning and plotting, I guess, that probably seemed kind of underground type of thing, but really we had a job that we thought was important to do, and we were doing it. Of course, it aroused controversy, but you really can't help that. Anyway, some good came of it, and kind of changed the way that the Education Association did business, and we felt it was worthwhile. I don't know, another time I had a strange woman that I wouldn't allow to visit my classroom, and that thing hit the newspapers, both the Times and the PI, as well as the local newspaper, and God, it was on television. She took the case to the school board, and the school board wouldn't really give her, they'd listen to her, but they essentially took my side in the case, and although they certainly weren't a whole lot of help to me when I needed it, but that's okay. And anyway, she took her case all the way to court, and the court threw it out, and then she went to the legislature, and the legislature threw her case out. And all through that time, it took a long time, must have taken a year or something like that, to get my picture, my name, and all these media and so on. And at some point I ran for office, and it was, of course, sort of the same stuff running all through that. And I never really intended to make myself some kind of a controversial character. It just seems like you have something you need to do, and the newspapers will do it for the rest for you. So maybe that's how I got associated with that kind of an image. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a controversial type of guy, but all these things seemed important in and of themselves, not for the point of arousing controversy, making that kind of an image. In fact, Dick Schaefer was here just a couple of days ago, and he came up with some kind of a comment about the nature of my life, and I said, well, what about yourself? What kinds of things come to your mind that you've done yourself? Been a lot of the ordinary, maybe, and he has all these associations with mountain climbing. He climbed the Matterhorn, and I think it was called Orizaba down in Mexico, and in which case I wish I'd asked him on tape, actually. He had it seemed like the biggest narrow escape he had was appeared to be some bandits on the way into the place. And he's up over 17,000 feet there. I don't know how high that was, and on with his sailing experiences and so on. So it seemed like, he had climbed Rainier by a route that I never got to go, the old route, which is what we think of as the left side of Gibraltar Rock and so on. So I'm not so sure that my life's any different than his or a lot of other people. To me, the lifestyle I never would have stumbled on by myself had to do with things that have to do with keeping the house and yard and so on going, in which case I learned most of that from Luana. And had we not been married, I probably would have lived a very different kind of a lifestyle. And looking back on it, I would, if I'd known the difference, I would regret having done anything differently. I think the lifestyle that I luckily stumbled into been a lot more rewarding, a lot more interesting. I think back of when we first moved into the other house and then moved into this house, and there were greater open spaces here in Kennydale, and I think of the kids, all your kids and your camps and the stickers and all the stuff that you had a chance to do in the open spaces around here. God knows what it was, but it was sure interesting to let it be happening. Just watch it all. I'm thinking of a time that when the stickers were so high that somebody got up on top of it must have been a 10 or 12 foot step ladder, or to look out through the top, and they're sticking up in the middle of the stickers, or they're looking out. But no, I just never would have tumbled into this kind of a lifestyle. A lot more enjoyable on a long haul basis than doing things like climbing mountains or running for office, or I don't know, whatever it is. Put together some money to go on this trip to Italy in 1990 and again in 1998, I guess it was. 97, 98, I don't know. Anyway, so I went substitute teaching. And boy, I tell you, is that ever an eye-opener. I remember going, among other things, up to McKnight, and I remember one or two of the teachers up there that had been there for 30 years, nearly 30 years, and they seemed kind of cranky and irritable. I'm thinking, boy, oh boy, I don't see how anybody could teach in one place like that for 30 years. I think they would, for heaven's sake, surely trade levels, go teach in a grade school for a while, or a high school, or take a sabbatical, or some darn thing. Just awfully hard to imagine staying in a place like that long. I know I was back and forth from subjects to grade levels to schools to taking the year off in a sabbatical, teaching in junior college, on all that kind of stuff. I could not have stood it to have been in one place for a long haul. I couldn't even stand to work on one ferry boat, one crew, one run on a long haul basis. I'd rather be called up at 2 o'clock on Christmas morning and go to Anacortes than to work on one crew all the time for 6 years. It would drive me mad. When I stopped moving from place to place, it must have got harder to remember events because up until now I've been going kind of chronologically, but we moved into this house and kind of stayed in one place for a long time. We did stay in one place for a long time. I think about a lot of my memories have to do with things that you boys did or Luana did. Just all these interesting things. I think of Luana raising bees and all the various kinds of flowers and vegetables, and she's grown landscaping, just kind of watching all that. And remodeling. I think of cooking outside for a whole summer while remodeling. I think it was remodeling the kitchen. All those things seem kind of memorable to me somehow. And I mentioned earlier stickers. I never mentioned the camp or the boat or whatever house it was built back by the fence behind the trees and bushes or whatever they were. I think of the bicycle rides the guys went on. Roland and Brian, I guess, were just respectively out of 7th and 9th grade. Wanted to ride down to Centralia to visit the Joyces, which we said okay, and they took off and did. And son of a gun, we were surprised and left in the morning, and they were there. They were there by afternoon. If they had taken their sleeping bags and stuff, we thought sure they'd be spending a night by road somewhere. But anyway, they took their gear and took a map and set off. And then later there were other bike trips by Curtis and Russell and maybe a friend along with them, I guess. And, some people would think that it was kind of risky to let the kids do that. But I always felt like it would be riskier not to let you do that stuff, because then where's any sense of self-reliance and independence without that sort of thing? And, it turns out kids can do that. Don't seem to be anything to stop you. So it was interesting to watch that stuff. And pretty impressive, I dare say. And then various things come to mind that I've done with one or the other of you. I know that quite a while ago I went on a bike ride around on San Juan Island with Russell. And I remember Kurt getting me, for among other things, to not so terribly long ago, a couple of years, I guess, just go up Little Si. We had a really good trip together that day. And I hadn't been up Little Si for many, many years. Very beautiful trip. I'm sure glad I did it now, because it doesn't look like I'm going to be doing it again right away. And so there have been various little things like that come to mind from time to time. I keep thinking about all the track events we used to go to, and that was a lot of fun too. Certainly a change of pace for us, but they were great years. And the one that comes most to mind right away with Roland was the hunting camp. Got pictures of the hunting camp in the album here. Every once in a while I flip through that and think that was really a great thing to have done. And again, a real change of pace for me. But boy, I'm glad now that I did it while I still could. Really enjoyed that. Of course, most recently, the trip to Italy, especially that wonderful hike, and then a meal at the chateau afterwards on my 70th birthday with Brian and his family in Luana, and wonderful views of the Alps and the nice, great afternoon. Some wonderful experiences there in Italy. Many things that you find yourself enjoying without recognizing that they're so different than what other people might have, just because you get used to it. I'm sitting here in a big red chair and looking at something that I just really enjoy looking at every day. You wouldn't think to mention it. I mean, it's the plants along the top of the bookshelf. So right now there's an orchid there that's kind of on loan to us, but there it is. And all these other plants along the top will leave you kind of like living in a sort of a jungle paradise. And over on my left, on top of the photo stand there, the antique photo stand from great grandpa or somebody, is the one of my favorite plants of all, the Halloween cactus. I guess it's going to be a Thanksgiving cactus too. But all that stuff, and it seems so normal to us, but a lot of the people we know just don't have it. But in spite of all the individual trips and experiences that I did with the individual ones of you boys, I was replaying in my mind the time that Russ and I rode around San Juan Island, thinking about whether one trip or two. Yeah, I remember one time finding a hat when we were down through the rabbit holes toward the water, and Russ found it. I think the hat's still around here somewhere. Going up there and seeing a guy that had his airplane that he wanted to give people rides in. And just a whole bunch of things like that. I remember going over to, I think it was clear over to Idaho with Brian on a particular track trip. Went to an indoor meet. And I don't know why those things just come into my mind as I'm trying to recall my life. And more than anything, though, I as I put this away and think through it all, the greatest thing of all, the things you can't remember any particular thing on a day-to-day basis, just the, what would I call it, the weave and fabric of life on a day-to-day basis with a whole family over the years. You could think about trips to Michigan, or you could think about a trip to Cape Cod and jumping off the bluffs down the sand and all manner of things like that, but I don't think any of it quite equals the just the everyday living with this particular family. And as I look at others, thinking how incredibly lucky I am. The end of tape 3, and I think most of this has been directed to the boys, since I guess Roland asked me to do it, but I keep thinking, as far as Luann and I are concerned, there's so many things. Again, just the everyday thing, but, there's things like the chickens, all the square dance years and those fun people. Think about crazy things that don't make any sense to come up, like we have a picture of the van out in the plains of Montana, cooking, and all those trips depending so much on that sort of thing. How can you possibly get down all those memories like that? Swimming in the icy snowmelt pool on Hurricane Ridge in 1958. The 27th of
December 1999, and the last recording of the millennium about to take place, I suppose. And it's something I came up this morning, I was talking to Luana. She said, that's the sort of stuff you ought to record. But what it was the days when Depression, in this case around 1936 or 37, but men would come to the door and ask for food, or ask to maybe chop some wood or do some work of some kind in return for food. And in one case, I remember coming into the house and found there was out from my dad. There was a guy taking a bath in our bathtub, and I don't know how the discussion had gone about, but apparently a man had come to the door, and I suppose my father must have noticed that he was in need of a bath and some clean underwear, and he let him take a bath in the bathtub, and gave him one of those woolen union suits of long underwear. And I presume the reason that she thought it might be good to record is that it wasn't just one of these little frivolous experiences of my own, but more representative of sort of the times that I lived in. And that jogged a memory of a similar thing in Sunburst, Montana. In the back of the barber shop, there was a door that had a sign on it, baths 2 bits. And if you went inside, there was a bathtub in there. And cowboys and other guys would come in and pay 2 bits to go in and use the bathtub, probably on Saturday night. And that's it. The end of the tape and the end of the millennium.